this video, we're going to build a real Pokédex app, including list, detail screen, navigation, favorites, API calls. More importantly, I'll show you exactly how I would learn React Native today with AI as my co-pilot. Hey everyone, what's up? My name is Simon. I run galaxies.dev, an online platform focused on React Native and Expo. And in this video, I'll show you how I would approach React Native in 2026. If this is your first React Native project or application, awesome. But also if you're coming from a little background of using React Native, you will learn a lot about AI agents and using AI to write better code in your React Native application. Maybe you're a web developer or someone who has worked with React Native a couple of years ago and you're not sure how it works today, then this video is exactly for you. The core concepts we're going to cover in this video are how to use Expo to bootstrap a new application, how routing works in an application, how you can build a tab bar with details and modals, how you can display data in lists and how you can fetch data from an API in the JSON format, and how to bring that then into a view with styling included, navigation, as well as how to manage favorites, keep data locally, and state in your app. On top of all of these things and the AI tools that we use along the way, we will also use CodeRabbit as our basically co-pilot that reviews our PRs. Thanks CodeRabbit for sponsoring this video and making this happen. Go check it out with a link below this video and set up your account completely for free. It is an amazing tool that I personally love so much. I'm working alone, nobody's reviewing my code, and I can now just draft a PR. CodeRabbit automatically jumps in and analyzes any potential issues of my PR, and then I can just fix it and hand it off to another AI agent. We live in incredible times and you want to use the best and latest available tools. And next to all the AI agents and LLMs that we use, CodeRabbit is an absolute must. So without further ado, let's dive into the fun. I want to just give you a quick picture from like 10,000 feet above in the tools that you need to know, the services that you might want to use, but I want to keep this really short and not dive into like the whole tech stack behind React Native and understanding exactly what's going on. That's probably for a different video. Now, you're coming here probably because you want to use React Native, you want to learn it, because you can write for multiple platforms at once. Instead of learning Swift and Kotlin and writing for iOS and for Android, you can do this at once with React Native. And not only for Android and iOS, you can also build for macOS and Windows as well as for the web. Essentially, React Native is just a different rendering engine for React. So for React, there's React DOM, which basically helps you to build websites. And for mobile, we got React Native. And so these other options for like platforms as Windows and macOS, these are kind of just different renders. Essentially, you will always see something like this. React code, which is JSX. So that means you gotta learn a bit about TypeScript and you gotta learn a bit about React. But with the current state of AI, you don't really have to dive into that too much, especially in the beginning. You need to understand a few things about React, but you can pick them out or pick them up while you go, simply because you can ask AI questions about the code that you've written. So if you don't understand why there's an image view and a text and a scroll view, just ask AI why it's there. So if you are starting with React Native in 2026, what you want to use is you want to use a framework, and Expo is the recommended framework for React Native. Expo does a lot of things and Expo can be absolutely confusing. I should probably do another video what exactly Expo is. So if you build an app, you're using the Expo framework. This will give you access to Expo Router, which enables file-based routing. We're gonna talk about that in detail. With Expo, you also get access to a bunch of SDKs that are built into, or a bunch of modules that are included with the Expo SDK. These are, for example, to open up a camera, use the clipboard, use the gyro sensor, Bluetooth. All of that is included with Expo. However, there's a giant community beyond this in React Native in different modules, and the good news is you can use also all of that with React Native and Expo, because there's no limitation with Expo anymore. There are different ways to build your Expo application, which we probably don't have to talk about in the beginning, but rest assured that Expo is not limiting you anymore. If you purposely used it a couple of years ago and you heard something about Expo eject, don't. It's not a thing anymore. There's Expo Prebuild. Look it up. I have a video on all the ways how you can build your Expo application however you want. We will also talk about some of the development tools that you can use to debug your application. And coming back to Expo, again, essentially it is the SDK that we're using, but beyond that, Expo offers a lot of CLI functionality, for example, to quickly go to TestFlight or the Play Store. They have a service called EAS, Expo Application Services, which is like a CI/CD solution. They have by now hosting, they have push notifications. So all of that can be brought in with Expo, but you don't have to know about all of that in the beginning. What you should also do if you're now getting started with React Native is have a decent IDE. My current editor of choice is Cursor. I've been using this instead of VS Code for the last 2-3-ish years now, and I just like it. I have mostly stepped away, honestly, from the AI functionality because I found that using something as Claude Code works a lot better right now. But this always changes. Maybe when this video comes out, Cursor has something epic going on, but right now for me, Claude Code with Opus 4.5 is just the winner. However, if you use Gemini and you like Google products, Gemini is cool as well. Codex is also great for coding. Just make sure you have anything like that set up. Gemini CLI, Claude Code, the agents in Cursor, whatever it is. Again, Cursor is my recommendation, but feel free to stick to VS Code if you prefer that. On top of that, you should have a GitHub account to follow along in this video, because in the age of AI is changing your code a lot of the times, and you don't want to lose progress, or you don't want to like run into something and you can't go back. With GitHub, you can make commits, you can make PRs, you can review them, which is something else we're going to take a look at in a second. But this just gives you a whole lot more security. And if you haven't done this before, please do me a favor and create your GitHub account now. And what we can do is we will use CodeRabbit to monitor our PR reviews and get an AI review of these PRs. That means essentially we change like 3, 20, 100 files, whatever it might be. We upload our code, we commit it, and then CodeRabbit will go through all the changes and tell us if we missed something, if there's a way to improve. And it is essentially like a colleague. If you don't have one, it is even better, but it is like the best possible colleague that looks exactly at your code and tells you, okay, this could be a potential issue and you could improve on that. And you can then instantly apply this to your code. It is absolutely incredible, and I love CodeRabbit. So you can install this with the link right below this video to CodeRabbit and then sign in with GitHub, for example, to create your account. That is essentially the tech stack you need for this video. React Native, JavaScript, TypeScript, bit of understanding about React, Expo as the framework, a decent IDE which has some sort of AI integration, Cursor, VS Code, anti-gravity, windsurf, whatever you prefer. An AI agent that spits out decent code, which is currently for me, as I said, Gemini, Codex, or Claude Code, and CodeRabbit in combination with GitHub to make sure your code, done by AI mostly, is in the right quality. Once you got all of that, we can take the next step and get our hands a tiny bit dirty, a bit less than in the past, but this is the 2026 way of learning React Native. All right, let's get started with the actual application. I highly recommend you just scaffold this out with the CLI of Expo, because that is the easiest way to set up your project without wasting any tokens for AI. So you can simply do Bunix or npx, depending on which package manager you're using. Bunix, in my case, create Expo app is the command here, and then we give it a name. Let's call this one Pokédex. This will set up a default project. So this will use the default template. We haven't specified default template. but that's what you get out of the box. And here we go. I can now cd into my application. I can run it on Android and iOS, but of course I just want to open it with cursor. So I will open it with my IDE, cursor -r Pokedex. I hope that works. That should bring it up in a new window. So here we are inside our new project with all those files. If you don't know what these files mean, don't worry, we will cover all of that while we build out the application. But to give you a quick win, the first thing that you can do right in this project is simply call Bunix Expo. This will start your preview server. In my case, it will do port 8081 or 8082. And then you should get a QR code. So you could scan this QR code now with your iOS or Android device, or you can simply test directly on your Mac or Windows PC. If you're on a Mac, you can test on the iOS simulator. If you're on Windows, you can only test on Android. In my case, I'm on a Mac, so I will press I in this one to bring up my iOS preview. This will then open up the Expo Go application and install or load our bundle. This works usually pretty fast. And now within just like 2 minutes of creating the project, you have your first React Native project up and running. There are limitations to this approach, which we will talk about later, but for the moment, this is really great. And you can do the same now with your device. You can download the Expo Go application from the App Store, you can scan this QR code, and then you will see your app. Now, since we want to understand how the application works, this application might already have a bit too much for my liking. So there's like a tab bar implementation, here's a folder with components, we have constants, we have hooks, and yeah, that's maybe a bit too much. We just want to gradually build that up and understand that folder structure a bit better. So what I recommend to do is, you can do this in a new terminal. You can just call bun run reset project. There's actually a script in your package JSON that this basically runs. So if we check this out, here is reset project. It calls node scripts reset project, and essentially it wipes out all the fluff here from that application. You can keep that. So do you want to move existing files to app example instead of deleting them? I actually don't want to do this. I will make a hard cut to get rid of all these things. And usually what you see then is once you reload, so on a Mac, you can just press Command Control Z to bring up this bar. If you're using a device, you can actually shake it. Or you can also, multiple ways for all of this, just press R in here, but sometimes it also just reloads automatically, which is most of the time actually during development. Now what we see now is a different picture. We just have a blank screen. There's like one text down here, a little header. That is a lot cleaner. And if you now check out this one, it should look a bit more quiet to the beginner. So the only really important thing here is the app folder. These are dot folders. You can basically ignore them. Assets, well, those are assets. Node modules is what we install with Node. And then we have a bunch of configuration files for the project. Honestly, the most important here in the end will be the app.json. This is like the configuration for your native build for the project. The rest of this really tsconfig and stuff, you don't really need that too much. So this is the only one you should care about, as well as the app folder. Okay, let's take a second. We have initialized the project. We have it up and running on a simulator, an emulator, or a device, and we've cleaned out our folder structure. Now, before we move on to some coding, let's also now establish a decent folder architecture for our application. So we will soon see that Expo picks up pretty much every file that lives here in our app folder. We can also do a quick test now to see that live reload is in place. So simply head into your index file and change this to hello world. All right, and instantly we see our code here updates to hello world from the text component. We don't really have to mind too much the syntax here. Again, as said in the beginning, most of this eventually will be handled by AI and code agents. But we still should understand the folder structure and how to give AI a good architecture in the first place. So I recommend we set this up manually. You can actually also change this to have a top level source folder, and in that source folder, the other folders. You would then have to change the TS config as well as the app.json entry point. I think, well, maybe we're gonna do this because it's fun. So let's change this to, or actually let's do a new top level folder source. And in there, we're gonna place our app folder. Now, the app most likely complains, but if I press R, it should automatically work because Expo Router at this point is smart enough to use that folder structure as well, so you don't clutter the top of your project. Now, next to that, I wanna create a new folder. Let's call this one components. And you can imagine into components, you would place anything that is like a component in a view, like a box, like a card, maybe a list, maybe a specific text element, anything like that goes into components. You also want to have a lib folder. Now, in the lib folder, you're going to most likely, or in our case, have files like, let's do one, for example, the poker API.ts. That one will basically define how we interact with an API, some functionality for the rest of our application. Additionally, in React projects, you're usually gonna have a hooks folder for any kind of hooks that are going on in your application. So you wanna place that up here as well. What you might wanna have is a state folder, but that could also live in lib. It's not that important right now. And since we're always using TypeScript, a types folder can be helpful if you later set up some interfaces. But honestly, we don't have to overcomplicate this. And this is pretty much better than 80% of React projects that I've seen in the wild. So if you just have some sort of foundation of architecture in place, it will be a lot easier to create clean code. Now, before we get started with more functionality, you should also understand that you want to use Git in your project. If you've never used it, well, this is a good time to get started because with AI agents doing code changes, you don't want to lose the state of what you had in your app. So please don't do this. You want to commit often, and we're going to see the flow of how that works in this video as well. So I recommend you head over to GitHub if you don't have an account, although I highly doubt it. Create a new one and then create a new repository. I'm gonna call this Pokédex. Can I still do this? Oh, I can do. I don't want to give it any description. I'm gonna make this, let's keep it public for the moment and let's hit create repository. This will give us information on how to connect this. We could probably also connect to this with an API. In fact, let's give this a try. So you can use basically any kind of AI in your application that you prefer. You can use Claude Code, you can use Cursor, you can use anti-gravity. It really doesn't matter that much. For simplicity, I will just open up Claude Code and tell it to connect this repository to this one here, to my GitHub account, and push the code. Okay, so this is honestly me being a bit lazy because in the real world, this pretty much takes like the two commands here. You could just copy that over. You could just do git remote add origin and then git push. That will push your code. In my case, it's basically doing exactly the same stuff. I just did it with like a command here. So now when we reload here, we should soon see that our application is initially in here. Welcome to your Expo app. We even have a nice little README here. I will probably update that, but for the moment, that seems to work. Now in VS Code or Cursor, you can also always check from up here the Git workflow. So right now we see that there are a couple of changes here which come from my initial commit. So I will give this init to winit, which is my favorite initial commit message, and I will call commit and push. You can also do just commit and sync changes, and this will just instantly update our code here. We see now we have a couple of files changed by init to winit. So this is the first step in connecting your app. Now, if you do any changes in your code, let's say we go back here and say, hello world, oh damn, we're going to see is that this will be picked up as changes here, and we can review those changes. This is incredibly important for working with AI agents, and you really need to get into that flow of reviewing your code. This becomes even more important now with AI writing like 80% of the code that you do. You can then also discard this, you can do branches, but that is a topic probably for another day. One more thing that you also want to do right now is get CodeRabbit set up. Use the link below this video to simply create your free account and then hit login. I usually prefer to use GitHub login because I will anyway connect it to my GitHub account and repositories. And that's what you should do now as well after setting up your repository. So in your CodeRabbit overview, you should see a list of repositories. If you don't see that yet, hit add repositories. That will take you to your GitHub account and install the extension. You can then select whether you want access to just one repository or all. That's totally up to you. I gave it to all, and I should actually be able to see my Pokédex project in here, right there. Here it is. This is part of my CodeRabbit organization. So use the link below this video to set up your CodeRabbit account first, connect it with your repository, because what this gives you is automatic code reviews from CodeRabbit. We have just done the basic here, so I didn't feel the need to actually review this. We directly committed to the main branch, but in the following videos or the following sections of this course, we will do a logic where we do a branch, like we split up our code, and we're gonna do all the changes in there and then say, hey, merge this back into our main. And whenever we do this, whenever we do a pull request to our main branch, CodeRabbit will simply jump in automatically. That is the automatic configuration. You can, of course, change that automatic configuration if you want to. You can actually also have like a local file for CodeRabbit in your application. You don't have to go crazy with all of that, but you can also tag CodeRabbit directly in a PR or anywhere else on GitHub, which basically means you have full control over CodeRabbit. But for the moment, we're gonna just use it in the default automatic mode, which will be super helpful to make sure that the PRs, the code that we add to our repository, is actually high quality. And that is exactly what CodeRabbit helps. And I found it, honestly, super helpful because when I work with AI, I sometimes change like 10, 20 files for a feature, and mostly AI is writing the code for me. And I'm not entirely sure all the time what changed and what implications that means. And in this age, CodeRabbit is invaluable to me because it goes exactly through that PR, looks at all those files, and gives us an overview about what could potentially be improved, what is dangerous, and what we should fix. And especially if you're new, which you probably are if you're watching this video to get started with React Native, then this will be incredibly helpful for your journey. So make sure that up until this point, you have the Expo app application up and running. You can see it on a device or simulator. You have a decent folder structure in place. You have set up your GitHub repository, and you have connected your GitHub repository to CodeRabbit, in the best case, using my own link below this video. Once you got all of that, let's take it a step further and implement some functionality. One of the most important concepts in any kind of mobile application is the routing or navigation. Tab bars, side menus, stacks, that's basically how you navigate around in an application. And that's what we want to implement now. So right now our app is just one page. It just loads this one file here. It has a layout file which already defines a default stack from Expo Router, and that stack simply picks up every file that is next to this layout file. So in theory you can also have sub-layout files, layout files for different levels and folders in here. Maybe we're gonna get to that, but for the moment we don't need that. What we want now is to implement a tab bar in our application. And in the past, I would have told you how you add those files, how you change the layout, and what you got to do. But in our case, we're going to do it, of course, with AI. So I will open up Claude Code here now. And let's give this some more space. And we're just going to tell implement a tab bar with 2 tabs for, let's call this Pokédex and favorites. keep the files empty for now. Okay, I will change this to edit automatically in my case, because this is a quite easy change. I don't really need to see what is going on. In the meantime, what we want to do is we want to make a branch so we can later review what we changed. For this, you can simply press Command-Shift-P to bring up here this palette, and then you can say create branch git. So I will give this the name, I will give this, maybe we're going to use numbers so we can see this later easily. Or does it really matter? It doesn't really matter. Let's just call this navigation. Or maybe you're going to, yeah, let's just do navigation. It doesn't matter. All right. Now we should also see that we have a tab bar up in here, but there's a problem with the header area. So we see like duplicate header and there are no icons. So let's change this. I see a duplicate header, fix that. Also add better icons and some colors to the tab bar. All right, this should hopefully update this one. This is basically how I approach currently every feature and everything that I develop, and we're gonna continue with this across the app because honestly, this is what I would do and will do in the future. So now it already changed this to red, and we can change between the views. Actually, we don't really see what's in those views. So now it becomes more important how that actually works. So to understand Expo Router, take a look at what Claude created here. We now have a tabs folder. Actually, it's using parentheses, which makes this a group. A group means files in here are grouped together. And you can think pretty much of this about like a URL in the web browser. So every page has a URL. And if we have a group with parentheses like the tabs here, they are grouped together. You can use the parentheses tabs in the URL, but you don't have to. It is optional. If I would just have used tabs, it would be a default. So in that case, I would always have to use /tabs/details, Pokédex, whatever. All right. Let's additionally check out what changed as well. So the main layout now has a stack, as well as a stack definition for the first tabs screen. This definition here always references a file or a folder. So let's close here the view. In our case, this one references the tabs folder. Additionally, you can have some options here. Cursor, Claude made that correct. I don't want to show the top header because the tab bar actually has its own header. Now in the tab bar, we're gonna see there's another layout file, and that one now defines the tab bar for Expo Router. It did set up the screen option with some styling here. We do have a tab screen for index, as well as for favorites. That looks pretty cool. This again references exactly the files. This is the important thing to understand about Expo Router. It's always looking for the files. So this one actually, I won't have to do it like this. This one is index, and here we go. This one is favorite. So there's always a connection between these screens and the files. If anything is wrong, this is what you want to check out. We also have a tab bar icon. That's pretty cool. Now, what I would like to see as well is there's actually also a way to use native tabs with liquid glass support. Maybe we can tell Claude to please change the tabs to use liquid glass. Expo supports native tabs at this point. All right, let's maybe ask before it edits here, because I'm not sure if Claude can figure this out correctly. The difference is simply that this here is like the old school way of displaying tabs, and there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, I will just give it access here because I'm pretty optimistic that I will be able to figure it out. That's not looking too great. Allow searching for this query. Yeah, sure, go ahead and do this. So there's nothing wrong with the default tabs implementation of Expo Router. That is like I used tabs for the last 7, 8, I don't know how many years, maybe not 7 or 8, but anyway. But since iOS introduced the liquid glass effect, Expo has an experimental, or maybe at this point it is also a stable released version in which you can get this liquid glass tab bar. I'm pretty sure if you're an iOS user, you have seen this before. Expo is also trying to check this out. So Claude is trying to, it's too confusing, all these elements. So this is pretty much what we're after and what I want to see. So I'm curious, on iOS this will automatically, oh yeah, it already changed. So here is our new liquid glass support. This is now a native element. It's not like we render any kind of strange components here. Nope, this is exactly using the native iOS functionality. The change for this, as you can see, is actually pretty easy. All we got to do is implement native tabs instead of the layout we had before. And then the syntax here is a bit different, but again, you don't have to care too much about the syntax. The functionality really counts, and that's what we see in here. So to change something, let's add something to our view here now. So let's close all my editors, and then we're just gonna expand here. Let's just say here, we're gonna say Pokédex, and we bring in a text. And on the favorite screen, we're gonna do something similar. So let's import the text style of view a bit. And we should see that we actually have two tabs. Claude also informed us that on other platforms like Android, it will also use a different way. Of course, not liquid glass tab bar, because that's not available on Android. And on older devices, it will also backfall to the default JavaScript tabs that we've seen before. So at this point, you also see a bit about the styling already. We might have to look more into this once we get to a page. It might look confusing right now, but honestly, we will get used to that. And again, the syntax isn't that important anymore. So with that in place, I would also like to have a default page. So let's also tell Claude to implement a details page, so I can later navigate to the details of a Pokemon. This should be like a stack inside one of the tabs. I'm actually not sure if I want it to be. So this is one of those design decision moments you got to think about. Do you want to keep the tab bar open and push a new page and keep seeing the tab bar? Or do you want to push a page and not see the tab bar anymore? The difference is in how you think about this. If you think about, I want to completely overlay this, you would have to implement a page that lives above the layout of the tab bar. So essentially, if you want a page that completely replaces what you see here, you would place this here next to our top stack layout. If, on the other hand, you want something that is like inside of the tab bar, you would, as Claude did, add a new folder so you can dive into that from the tab. Is this already done? Well, it's not completely done. Yeah, it moves the old index file. Okay, so I'll add a button so I can test navigation, and that should hopefully add a new button. Now what changed is that at this point, Pokédex, this page here, becomes its own layout. So we have another folder here inside the tab bar with its own layout. So in total, we have like 3 layout files already in our application. This one now simply defines another stack screen, and it defines also an index page. That is actually the page we had before. Claude just moved it here. And an ID page. And that ID page now comes with these brackets here. This is a placeholder, so you can pass like 10, 15 e.g. XYZ to this page and extract it with a function. So here's the hook: use local search params from Expo router, which is used to extract the ID, and then it's just displayed here on that page. Before I keep talking, let's check if this actually works. Yeah, that actually works pretty nice. Okay, so you see the tab bar keeps staying open, and we push here and we got this native back button. So this page now has its own implementation, its own little header, and honestly, it works pretty good. I didn't expect that. Our native tab bar now also changed slightly. Actually not, because the name here can reference either the file we had before or a folder. So in this case, now it's referencing that folder, and we don't have any problems with that. The good thing is that native tab bar does not have any default header, as you can see right here. So if you want to have a header, which we maybe actually want to have on the favorite page, then you would need to have this folder set up as well. So in that case, what you can do is just tell Claude again, the favorites page should also have its own layout and stack, so we get a header. And the change here for should be pretty straightforward. It is the same like the Pokédex, only that we don't need the wildcard here in the name. Instead, we just need a folder called favorites, and in that folder favorites, we will probably have now an index file instead next to a stack layout implementation. Yep, you can also remove the old favorites file now, and once this is done, we see we have a clean tab bar layout with 2 folders. This one here, we might have to reload once, because if you move files around, Expo is sometimes, let's see, we don't have any kind of index page now anymore. That's something Expo probably doesn't like, although it is supported at this point. Let's say we don't have any index file anymore, and Expo loads with unmatched route. Maybe we should have one with a redirect. And let's talk about that. I'm not 100% sure, because normally Expo replaced this, so we don't have to. But as a fallback, it wouldn't hurt to have a little index file maybe up here, and that index file could simply be a redirect to our href tabs Pokédex, which is like the main URL. And now you see it redirects us instantly here. It's not rendering any other page. We're just here. Okay, so we have a nice setup here with default, with push to that default page, details page. We have favorites, which has now also its own stack. So I think we can finish the implementation of the routing for the moment. We have understood folders, stack navigation, tabs, all these things. This is the mental concept of having layouts, having one file per screen, and that's enough. Now let's do a PR. First of all, we should commit our code. I will just generate my commit message, update layout, yep, and then I will usually do commit push. So I will just, let's bring this in quickly. Here is commit push. I usually do this. Would you like to publish this branch? Yep. We haven't published my branch before, so we do this now. If we now go back to our repository, we should see that we had a push 3 seconds ago. We will now do a PR, a pull request. I'm just gonna keep this like it is, and I'm gonna create the PR to my repository. We changed a couple of files, 8 in total, and now we're gonna see that CodeRabbit jumps in. So at this point, quick reminder, if you haven't set this up in the introduction, just go to CodeRabbit with a link below this video, create your account, connect your repository, and then CodeRabbit will automatically jump in here. CodeRabbit will then do 2 things. It will actually update my initial message, but I think it's going to do this after the review. And meanwhile, we're going to see this here. This is, you can disable in progress messages and the fortune message. Oh, I can also disable this. Interesting. Yeah. No, I actually like how it is. So I will keep it like it is. And we're just going to have to wait a minute until the review is done. All right, the code review is done. First of all, we see the new features, added bottom tab, Pokédex, favorites, and route redirects to Pokédex. That's fine. Then we get a full walkthrough of the changes in our application. In our case, that's actually not too hard. We just have these new files explained and what they do. Pretty helpful if you're unsure what the AI actually did, but in our case, we should pretty much understand already what's going on. This one here I can copy. Can I can zoom in if I want to. Yeah, but the navigation might be a bit challenging. Essentially, it describes the sequence we can go through. So users open the app, they're redirected to the Pokédex renders, and it shows the index screen. At that point, we can then display also view Pikachu, which brings us back and then pushes the Pokédex. So just a little sequence diagram. I'm also even more interested in any potential fixes or problems. Because, it failed a check. Oh, docstring coverage. Yeah, we will probably not coverage today. But here seems to be a problem. The SF prop references iOS only simple since the app supports Android. Oh yeah, that is a good catch. We should probably do this. So it is absolutely right that our list here, our tabs layout for native tabs only references a SF symbol. This is only for iOS and we need an Android symbol. The cool thing is that here's actually a prompt that I can just copy in. So I will just paste this in here and say edit automatically. And that should hopefully update my tab bar. But that is a very good catch. I'm usually or mostly testing on iOS, so I sometimes don't catch these things. A better way would probably to also test this on Android. So I will also press A to open up my Android emulator. That sometimes works and sometimes isn't working. I'm not the biggest fan of the Android emulator, to be honest, or any Android device for that matter. But here it is. So let's see how this looks right now. Okay, so their default. Oh no, I messed this up. I shouldn't have done that. I should not have done that. Let me click here. I should probably put this somewhere else. But what is the command? Let's do just a refresh here. Then it should reload because I got stuck. Okay, so I can switch between this and the navigation on Android also seems to work, but I still don't see any image here. Android is now using our Pokédex icon. I cannot see any Android icon yet. So maybe this is about the naming of the Android icon. Doesn't support a children prop. Yeah, probably it is something along those lines. So hope Claude is able to fix this. This is one of those cases where this is a pretty new thing. And if we wouldn't have used the native bar, this wouldn't have happened. So if you don't see any Android icons yet in your application, although native tabs at this point should support them correctly, then probably go back to using the default tab bar implementation from Expo Router. You see, these are still marked as unstable, so it is always with a bit of care. Okay, so we got this here. There are no other checks. I could also just use this code here potentially. So with the platform select source material icons, would that work? We can give that a try, but we're already using material icons. So I don't think that this is the problem. We could do more investigation here, but for the moment, let's leave it like it is. Quick additional note, I wanted to make sure that you Android folks also see an icon. So I looked this up in the Expo doc, which was already opened and Claude gave me this. You can also, or should probably specify a drawable. In another version of the native tabs, we might be able to specify an image, but at the time using it, I had to use drawable, and then I just told Claude to please update this to use Android default drawables. Now, with that in place, you should see that even with this native tab bar implementation on Android, you have some icons. Otherwise, you need custom drawables or other images that you can use. But that should fix it. Make sure that you also correctly include this in your repository. So you don't have to do another PR. You can just push and commit this to the main branch, and then we can continue. So if I add this, you're gonna see on GitHub that right here, there's a new push. And CodeRabbit will jump in to do another review. We don't really need this, so at this point I will just merge my PR here we have successfully merged this into my main branch. And now the most important thing in here is to not stay in the branch, but actually say git checkout back to main. And once we're back in main, we also want to make sure that we refresh. So normally I think it should check out everything. If not, you can always do a git pull in here. So that will download all the latest code, and then you should be back in main. And we're ready for the next feature of the app. Now we want to bring in some data into our application because a Pokédex isn't anything without data. So I would like to use the Poké API for that. And traditionally, I would probably look into the different calls and how I should use this, but we're gonna live in the AI age. So let's tell Claude what to do. Please fetch a list of Pokemon from the Poké API and display them in a list on our, and you can now with add reference also files. So that would be probably my Pokédex index file. The idea behind this is now pretty easy. If you want to get data, allow fetching this data. We want to structure this in the right way. This is really the important part about this lesson. And before I forget about it, let's create a branch. Let's call this API calls. On the Pokédex page, we could, in theory, make these calls or in this list. And that's probably also what's going to happen. We already see our list coming up here on that page. Not too bad, actually pretty good. That was faster than I imagined. But now see what happened. Claude made these changes and placed pretty much everything there is into our index page. We have interfaces in here, we have loading states in here, we have a use effect which runs when we enter this page and which makes a fetch request to the API. So that part is definitely correct. But all of this handling in here doesn't feel right. If you want to build your application in a solid way, you probably wouldn't do it like this. Also, there are some issues like we can't scroll further than 50. Maybe this is something to refactor later. But for the moment, what we want to is actually restructure this. So this is something you need to know and to do when working with AI agents. You know sometimes better about the architecture of your application. So keep the API calls out of my view and instead use the, and I think we created a file in the initial, right? The Poké API TS in the lib. Okay. So we're gonna say that instead, and then Claude or whatever AI you're using will hopefully refactor this, because you want to keep the files here in the app folder really as sort of like the UI presentation of your app. This is my favorite page, this is my index page, this is my modal page. But those pages shouldn't be too much connected to a functionality like loading the actual data. So instead, what you want to have and want to see is a better lib file like this. In here, we can now see that in my Poké API, we have the same calls. We're using fetch with a base URL. That base URL is probably set up here, right? And it's making a call to the endpoint. We have some nice types. In fact, we also had a fault for types. So extract the types into our types folder. And I mean, this is a bit nitpicking here probably, but we're here for a good setup. And the cleaner you start your application, the better it will be in the long run. Because if you start having the interfaces in one TS file here in the API, you're gonna have it in more files and then it will grow in here, and then it will just get painful because you have to update all these imports later on. So instead, do yourself a favor, and if you have a types folder as we did, do the interfaces, the types, or whatever in there. So now we have a whole lot better structure. Our index page here is pretty much clean. We import the type from types, we import the fetch from our lib, and we import the other view elements from Expo and React Native. One thing I also notice is it's actually using the wrong router here. Normally you would use router. So I will also tell please use router for the Expo router import and usage. If you notice something like this, it is also always a good idea to initialize a Claude, Cursor, whatever agents file in your project. There are also a couple of skills that you could use. So under skills.sh, you're gonna find a list of skills that you can add. Right now, you're gonna see Vercel being very high up. I highly recommend you check out these skills and add them to Claude, which will give best practices. So for example, here is one called React Native Best Practices from CallStack. You can simply add this skill and later tell the AI to use this skill to improve your application. So in my case, really this use router was a little pick I just noticed because I know how it works. All right, so how does it now all work together? Well, we have our page on load, which is use effect with an empty dependencies array. That simply means it runs once when this component is mounted. This will fetch our list of Pokemon and then update my state here, which is an array of Pokemon. Strongly typed, super cool. We also have a little loading state. We could discuss how we could improve that, but for the moment, let's keep it like it is. And then we have a render item function here, an early return. We're gonna come back to that in a second. And a flat list down here. That is actually already the improved version. Sometimes AI might give you a scroll view, and that is usually not a good way to display data in React Native. Flat list is a built-in component from React Native, so you can import it from React Native, and it just gives you a whole lot better performance for lists. Therefore, if you see a scroll view here rendering like mapping over data, that is usually not something you want to see. This flat list then gets the data, which is an array. It has a key extractor function to make sure everything is unique. And it has a render item function, which is exactly what we saw up here. So this function essentially tells our application how does one, let's close that one. How does one row in my application in this list look like? And we pass an item to it. So we're getting the Pokemon here. We're also fetching the sprite URL. Oh, I messed up that one. I don't like that. How can I change it? Here we go. No, I don't want to come back. I just want to have my free form. Here we go. Okay, so it fetches the sprite, which is the image, and then returns a view component. In our case, a touchable opacity. Oh, geez, why is this still back? Why is it still the arrow tool? I said I want to use this one here. Okay. A touchable opacity is simply a component you can press and it changes automatically the underlying. So you say it changes the opacity here. You can style these, and on press, we're just gonna push our next page. This here isn't really required. We can remove that. Yeah, okay, it complains. That's interesting. Oh, AI was even smarter than me. Okay, we then have an image component, which is the image we see, as well as a text with the name here. Now, all of this works and looks great because it is using styles. So in many places you see styles.item, styles.sprite, styles.something. So where is this actually coming from? Well, if we tap into this, at the bottom of our view, AI created this style object. This is how you style, at least basically in a basic format, your React Native applications. And maybe even most applications rely on the built-in style sheet API. It is sort of an abstraction over the web style sheets. So it is typed, and there are things that might exist in the web that might not yet exist in React Native. There's maybe a more alignment happening over time currently, but it is actually a good thing. So in here, you can then define different, basically like CSS selectors. So we have centered, we have list, and then you have the usual properties that pretty much look like you would also do in CSS on the web. All of this is very performant. There are other ways, other styling libraries. There's also a way to easily use Tailwind CSS in your application. Just check out the other videos on this channel For now, and while you're getting started, I highly recommend you simply stick to style sheet. There's nothing wrong with it. I use it for my own applications as well, and see, it gives us a pretty clean and nice UI here. You could extend this, improve this with AI however you want. But what I would like to have is, we have a loading state. So maybe let's comment this out and check if the loading state is correctly working in my application. Yeah, seems to be working quite nice. Do we have like error handling in this call? Not really. So we might want to have more error handling, but maybe we're going to leave this for later. The biggest thing that I see right now is that the list here is not yet complete. So on top of this list, we now need also reload. So I can also just use my cursor. AI is sometimes a bit slow. I will try to use Claude instead. I usually found this better. The list is only loading 50 items. When I reach the end, I want to load 50 more. Or maybe we set the limit to 30. That's maybe better, because if you initially load 50 items, that's actually quite a lot. So thinking about this, maybe we can improve performance if we only load like 30 elements at once. The user has enough to see, maybe even 20 would be enough at that point. And then the list could just reload more data. Now, I will hopefully refactor this. Where is it? Where's actually my Claude view? Yes, I want to allow everything. So it should now introduce a little limit and offset to our Pokey API. So then we can call that function with a limit and an offset, and that should be passed to the API. Yeah, looks correct from my point of view. Additionally, our list now has to change as well. So we should probably already see this. Yeah, we're passing in the right limits here. And in the view of the flat list, we should see on reach threshold and on end reached. These are the functionalities that are triggered basically like an infinite scroll list. So whenever you reach now the end or the threshold of the list, that end, the load more function will be called. And it's simply another call and probably doing something with our limit and offset. We don't have to care too much about that. AI is pretty accurate with figuring that out. So at this point, I should be able to see 30 elements and going there. Yeah. You see, sometimes if I get to the end of the list, I see a short loading indicator, but overall, yeah, that's nice. Oh, there are more than 150? You know, I'm an old school guy. When I got started with Pokemon, there were 150, and there will always be 150 Pokemon in my heart. I don't know, I probably know all the 150 by name. I don't know anyone beyond the 150. Yeah, I'm so sorry for the generation after us. Anyway, this is now the better way and the correct way to display our data. So far, we have created this view with the flat list for performance. We have outsourced the API calls to our Pokey API, which is using fetch. That is okay. We could maybe even do it better, but we don't really need that yet. And finally, I would also do one more thing, which is bring back a better styling for the tab bar. Give the native tabs and headers again a better styling. We previously had sort of an orange-red theme. So let's just edit this automatically. Change it like this is pretty easy. By the way, Gemini is usually actually better with UI tasks than the other AIs, but since this is mostly about like adding some color to a header element or the native tab bar here, I'm pretty sure that Claude will be able to figure this out quickly as well. If you want to fine-tune this, you can of course do this yourself. So you can just go into the appropriate layout. In my case, that would be here, the layout which sits right next to our index page. Now, This is an interesting layout. I don't know if I want to go for the dark background. I don't really like that one, to be honest. Claude, I don't know. That is a hard one. And why does it always close my view here? Oh, it's still doing, okay. Please don't make the BG dark. Keep it light. I will already tell it this one, but yeah, I don't like that. All right, one thing we should check is if we can go to the details page. Yeah, we can, but probably it's inaccurate at this point. So this is something we need to fetch next. But for the moment, I think this is worth a commit because we're loading data, we have infinite loading, and we should understand if this was now good or not good. So let's do a commit. I will do a magic commit message. I will commit and push this automatically and publish my branch. And with that in place, we can head over, create a pull request for our API calls, and then let's wait until CodeRabbit strikes to review the code. By the way, I have now also the Android emulator up and running, so I can confirm this code definitely also works flawless on Android. Especially on Android and older Android devices, performance is unbelievable critical. So while you're building out your first or your second React Native application and maybe you're testing a lot on iOS, you should always test on Android as well if you want to see like the real performance of your application. This gives you the best picture at what's going on in your app. At this point, if I had used a scroll view for 30 elements, I would probably get away with that. But if I'm using something else, absolutely, this is not gonna work great. I will also show you a way to debug your application later. For the moment, we haven't really encountered any problems, but if you step into any issues, what you can easily do is you bring up the terminal in which you initially ran your Expo command and you press J. So there you will see a debug target, and in my case, I will select the iPhone, and then you have access to powerful React Native debugging tools. In the React Native dev tools, you see the console log. You can dive actually into the sources. So if I wanted to, I could now go into the Pokédex. Okay, this is the bundled file. I would probably would have to go into the unbundled files, and you could even set a breakpoint here if you want to. Maybe I should zoom in, that will look better. And if I then press reload, I'm able to pause on these breakpoints. Although I'm not sure why it's not catching these. Maybe I haven't hooked it up entirely, but explore the dev tools because there's a lot going on. So you see all the fetch requests in here for the images that we do. You can do snapshots and components. This is actually something already a bit more advanced. I do have a video on how to improve the performance using the profiler. So you can profile your React Native application just like a web application essentially. And let's do, I think it's not correctly connected right now anymore. So I would have to do it again. And then from the components, for example, you see the component tree right here. And from memory, I could now do a profiling here. I could take a heap snapshot. Or if I go to the profiler, I could actually record this. And now you see also I'm triggering the breakpoint. So the dev tools here of React Native are absolutely excellent. They used to be quite painful in the past, but what you can do at this point is pretty much at the same level of web. So I will now, let's do this one more again. So you even see like a profiling, you can have a flamed graph or ranked, you can see which views take the longest to render, all these cool things. You can also enable highlight updates when component render. This is something I keep on all the time. And then I see these borders and see which of my components and views are re-rendering. This is a bit more advanced. I just want to give you a quick glimpse into what is possible in case you encounter problems. But with AI, you're usually able to figure out most of the stuff on your own already. Now, coming back to our code review, let's check out the summary. We have our infinite style list scrolling, and we have a bit of styling changes. Nothing crazy. These are the files that we changed, so that is fine. The sequence diagram is also in place. Fetch Pokemon, we get back the results. We have the loading state, the flat list rendering, and also once we scroll to bottom, we will have the load more triggered with additional using an offset of 20, very accurate sequence diagram here by possible related update layout to, I don't know what that one is about. Okay, let's see. We have actionable comment posted. Okay, looks like there are some things to pick. So here, yeah, this is something I noticed as well. We don't really have good error handling. We just fetch the data. This is the suggested change with error handling. So we should probably add a catch. I'll just copy this over and give it to Claude, and Claude will hopefully generate the accurate code. Additionally, what is going on at error handling and end of list detection? Oh, that is cool. Yeah, that's a pretty good one as well. We should do that as well. So once this is done, which should be done pretty easy, we're gonna follow this up with the code here. Actually, I can already probably chain this. Yeah, it's done anyway. It's quite fast. And once those two are done, is there anything beyond that? Oh yeah, there's add error handling. Didn't I just do that? Use effect fetch. Suggested fix. Okay, yeah. We could probably just do this our own, honestly. So I could just copy that over and heat to my Poke API, because sometimes I feel like I still want to do something on my own. And then it feels good to do this. Okay, so we're just gonna replace it. Just gonna copy in actually the 3 important lines here. If I remember where they were after the rest, yeah. Okay, here we go. Return this one. And then we have a nice throw in here in case we fail to fetch the data. I would actually think that we should probably have that in all. Okay, we only have one real API call, so that's fine. This one is also good to go. So essentially we should now have error handling in here with a finally state. We have an error message. If that goes wrong, we have an early return here, which just renders a view with the error, and instead, and otherwise we still have the flat list. That looks good to me, so we can append this to our PR. So let's hit commit and push. This will just add these files to the open pull request. We fixed everything, so as we get this, I can now also merge this. And then we have a nice base. Like, we have built this application, and we haven't written a lot of code for it by hand, but I hope this flow now becomes more natural to you. This is how I learn new things, how I develop things right now in 2026, and I don't think we're gonna go back in time. There's not really any value for me showing you how to write all these use states from scratch and you have to type this as well. I'm not doing this, so you don't have to do this either. And I think by just looking at what we're doing and understanding the concepts, you actually get a lot out of this video and a great understanding about how React Native works. Now, with our list in place, with the API fetching in place, it is time to dive into the details page in the next part. Let's now talk about how you navigate around in your application and pass parameters to pages so you can eventually show details. This is one of the most foundational concepts you need to understand, which is in every list you go into a details page, and therefore this Pokédex application is so great. So let's tell it, implement the details page for Pokemon by loading the data from the API and displaying it in a modern way on the page. I could even reference this, on the ID page, but pretty sure since we only have a couple of files, that AI would be already able to figure this out on its own. Now, what do we expect and what is actually going on in our application? We initially already saw how the routing works, but let's take one more time a closer look. Right now we have our render item function, which uses the Expo router push command. With the push command, you pretty much push a new page onto the stack. There are also other ways. For example, you could also from Expo router use a replace. There's pop, there's dismiss if you want to go back eventually at some point. But push is essentially the one you want to use if you want to go to a new page. As well, we have a maybe strange syntax here, but if you're into JavaScript for some time, you know this. These are string literals, and they allow to use the $sign with the curly brackets here to pass in a variable into that string. So essentially, this one here turns out to be Pokédex/123, whatever we happen to click on here in that list. We already see this. It already renders for a details page the right ID. Now, when we get to that page, we can extract that data because we gave that route this the brackets here, ID. That could also be name, could be anything. But since we gave it ID, we are able to get it using use local search params, and we're gonna type it correctly here, ID string. So if you gave it a different name like Pokemon name, you would now use Pokemon name here and Pokemon name here in the beginning instead. If I go to the details page, we already see a nice view now. That is so much better than I could do, honestly. The scrolling here feels a bit weird. I don't know. Is that actually a scroll view? Yeah. The scroll view has set bounces to false, so maybe you want to remove that because that actually feels really weird. Yeah, that feels a lot more like iOS. Okay. Also, this is one of the moments where I could tell AI that, hey, the bottom bar is actually overlying this. Or you could just get yourself the hands dirty, check out what's going on. So every scroll view has a styling, which defines a general styling, as well as a content container styling, which defines the styling for the inside elements of that scroll view. So if you want to, you could now define that as well as a little additional one here. We got some nice styling here, and then give it some bottom padding. With that in place, essentially the list becomes a bit longer, and we got that space down here reserved, and it just works a whole lot better. Also, you notice it reserves here that page. It is absolutely a native transition we got going on here. So that's really great. That turned out pretty nice. We don't really have to go through all the styling. So this is all the stuff we would have probably written in about 30 minutes if I had done this as a classic tutorial. Now, this here is something in that file I definitely don't like. This does really not belong here that much. So I would improve the details page, refactor the colors and styles to be in a different theme-like file. What else is there going on? Maybe also these stat labels. I don't know. Probably also put the stat label set into a types file or so. You know, this is the thing with AI. In the beginning, I was wary about optimizing your prompts. At this point, I'm usually just about spelling out the problem and what it is. So even if you have typos in here, you could also use something like Whisper or anything to speak into it and just tell it your thoughts. It is usually good enough. Just explain the problem and what's going on, and AI will be able to figure this out. So right now it created a new colors TS file, which is definitely something I have done as well, which defines these colors. This stuff does not belong into your view. You want to bring this in from a theme file or create a constants file as well. A constants file is always a great idea to keep up these things. Maybe you have some fixed strings, which makes it in the end a whole lot easier to also localize your application. Let's also check out what else is going on. So we already talked about getting the ID or getting any kind of dynamic data on the page. Then we make a fetch, just like we did on our previous page. We now also directly have the error handling in this page with early returns. This is something you usually want to do. And also what you usually want to do is you want to create a branch for details page. Okay. So if we're loading, we have an activity indicator. If we have an error or no Pokemon at all, we also return early, which means we never get to the code that follows here. That can actually also improve your performance because then it's not running through the other stuff. On that page, we now have wrapped that page, or AI has wrapped that page in that scroll view. This is one of those essential components of React Native next to a view, a text, and an image that you will see everywhere. Because very rarely everything you do on mobile fits into one screen, and you want to be sure that stuff can be scrolled. So you wrap it with a scroll view. If you don't like these bars, you can always define different props, either tell it to AI or maybe you know it. So in this case, you can say shows vertical scroll indicator false, and then would turn off this little scroll indicator. Beyond that, we just have a view. And all of that, what we see on this page is by default using a flex layout with React Native. So the header here, the header has two text elements, which is the number we see up here. Then we have the Pokemon name, then follows a type container, which maps through the types here inline and creates different types. And again, all of this is using flex direction. Sometimes row, by default it is column, but essentially this is how your view is composed. This is different from, let's say, Flutter, where you have a lot of definition inline. But to be honest, I like this a lot more. I feel like it's a lot more clean and structured in a good way. Our image is loaded directly from a source, and down here, yeah, we pretty much just have a lot more view elements. On top of the navigation we have here, I would also like to show you a little thing about modals. So maybe I'm gonna do a new Claude here and say from the ID page, open up a new modal with presentation form sheet. This is important to show some more fancy stats or information about the Pokemon. Okay. Now, why are we doing this? Well, this will show you how you can also add another important concept, which are modals. Modals in mobile applications are pretty much everywhere. You see a pop over, you see a view coming up, and there are different ways to display this. Now, I imagine, or I think at least, that this will now create, first of all, a new file in our application for this modal. It should then be integrated in the topmost layout, because think back, this is like coming down from top to bottom. It goes through the layouts, and we're gonna go through the root layout, and in there we should have something like a modal defined. It would probably work if we defined it in the Pokédex stack as well, but usually any kind of modal should go into the rootmost layout file for your application. AI is still tinkering on this, so we can keep waiting for this. The other important aspect is, yes, okay, I want to allow everything, of course. Yes, please, sorry, I forgot this. The other important aspect is about the presentation. So by default, as I said, everything is kind of pushed in onto the stack here. But for modals, they are different. They can have a different presentation. And we can actually look into this in the documentation and see there's a whole lot of ways to display this. Card modal, transparent modal. I would recommend you give all of them a try to just get a feeling for how they work. Especially transparent modal is interesting if you just want to have something with padding top and bottom that just lays over your content. But the form sheet is actually sort of like a newish thing, I would say. From Expo Router, because at this point it actually gives you a native bottom sheet. So if I click this button here now, view detail something, it tries to push my Pokemon stats model. Maybe we can directly dive into that file. Come on. Here we go. So let's find the appropriate place. So router push Pokemon stats model and passing in my ID. This time actually not as part directly here of the URL with a wildcard, but more like a query string. And that's no problem because in that way you can still extract the data correctly. Somewhere here we should have my Pokemon stats model or a file that is created. And within that file, okay, this is a stat circle. This is, oh, there's a lot going on in here. It can still use local search params to also get that ID in that way. So if I click this now, this bottom sheet comes up, actually a nice little spring animation going on, and I can scroll through it and close it. Okay, pretty cool what we got. It's probably absolutely something you don't need, but I just wanted to show you this as well. This whole view, I don't know what's going on. It's doing a lot with colors and things, and it's actually doing some cool components. We don't really have to care about that. The essential part is the presentation of a model and how it works, and I hope this already makes my point. There are some settings here you can play around with, especially the sheet allowed detents. That is an interesting one. So for example, if I set this to 0.3, 0.75 and 1, these are like essentially snap points. So I can snap here, it snaps here, and then it expands full. So that means you have like these areas where your view snaps a bit. Pretty cool. If you want to, you could also just set this to a card. Now I'm not having a way to go back. Let's see if I use a card. Card is actually the default or something. Let's just do modal as an example. That's a better one. That is like the default way of having a modal on iOS or Android. Isn't there like what is it if you have that card? Is it contain modal, full screen, page form sheet? What did we just use? I can't remember. There's so many options here. Is it contained modal? No, contained modal is, yeah. Anyway, we go back to form sheet because that's really the coolest presentation right now that I would recommend. And then we got this. All right, we have a nice little details page. We could make this even better, but I don't want to go too crazy here. So let's just commit our code now. Okay, yes, commit and push. I think I made a branch, at least I hope I did. And then we should see, yeah, my PR coming up. So let's create that pull request and then we can check what else we can improve. All right, so let's check out the review. Summary is pretty short because we just added one functionality. So I'm most interested in both the nitpicks and potential issues. At null safety for artwork URL. Yeah, this is a good one actually. Yeah. The artwork we have in our Pokédex file, it definitely needs a little fallback. So let's add that. We could tell it to AI, but I assume we can also just quickly do this on our own in line 49. Is it this one here? Yeah, the artwork URL should have a nice little fallback instead. Okay, that is a good catch. Absolutely want to apply this. Here is also potential mine if stat and stat2 are both null will be resulting in none for, yeah, that is true. So we should change the stat comparison here in the stat comparison. Stat, where is the stat comparison? That is in here. So probably might not apply to your code, but these are definitely great catches in general. Beyond that, missing error handling and perpetual state loading if ID is falsy. Yes, in our stat model, we could probably add that check. Stat model, where's the main thing here? Oh, here it is. Oh, I think we do have that one. So what is the fix? Have some error statements. Yeah, we could have that as well. So in the then we're gonna have set error true here, and then we add this error. I'm not sure if I could just apply this, honestly. That would make things a bit easier, but with this plus inside, It is a bit tricky because then I have to remove it in all the lines. So maybe I should just have better told AI about using this. And also, why are you not formatting my code anymore correctly? That is definitely something you should do. So then we can check if we don't have a Pokemon or there is an error, then we would display this component, maybe even show it in a different way. Then for the Pokemon, consider handling nullable sprite URLs. Yeah, that's probably really a smart thing to change this, but while we're here, let's do this as well. This is probably in our types. So this is where a good structure in our application comes in. Where is it? Front default string, right? That could also be null, as well as this one could be null. All right, that solves everything. These are once again nice little things that you probably don't notice. So especially if you're a beginner, the code we have looks great, it works great, but there are always edge cases. And CodeRabbit is really great at pointing out these edge cases and potential issues that can come up in your application. And it just makes your code a lot better, as well as helping you, especially if you're maybe a new developer, junior developer, or if you work on your own, you don't really have a lot of colleagues with experience. CodeRabbit is like the perfect person to check your PRs and give you some feedback on what's going on. So I really wish I had this like 5-ish, 8 years ago when I got started being self-employed and working on my own. I had no one to review my code, and I wrote always just my own code. So that is definitely something I wish I had back then. Glad I have it now, so I can now merge my PR back into our main branch. You should do the same in your application if you're following along. And then in here, making sure you check out back to your main, sync the changes, so you're pulling in all the latest changes. Oops, this is my own game. This is not what I wanted. Make sure you pull back in the changes from your main branch. And then we can go back into the application and just show our beautiful Pokédex, including our little model that we've built. So, hope you're at this point. If you're that far, you're ready for the next step. Another super important topic for React Native is handling inputs correctly. And we're gonna learn this now by building a little search into our application. So just like before, let's create a new branch. I will call this one search. And then we're gonna just close a bunch of these and create a new Claude Code view. What we want is implement a local search feature into the index page of our Pokédex, and load filter the first 150 results. Let's just go with this and see how far this gets. There are a couple of things that can go wrong with search and especially text inputs in general, because the problem is that what we sometimes don't notice, especially here, I forgot about this as well when I'm developing just with a simulator, is that there is actually on a mobile phone this keyboard. And in native applications and native mobile applications, you often have to think about how I handle the keyboard. Is the keyboard correctly displayed? Am I hiding it correctly? Does it cover the input field? Can the user actually see something? So there are a lot of things that can go wrong with keyboard handling, and it is important to take a mental note. Whenever you have a text input, there's a high chance that something is going wrong. Okay, let's try here. I will just go for Charmander. Yep. The general filtering here seems to work. Now, something I would like to see is when I scroll here, I want to close that list. There's actually a little flag that you can set on any scroll view or view that is behind the text input. So I don't know if we can actually set this here. Yeah, we probably can't because this is a flag of the scroll view. So I would tell this when I touch scroll the background, I want to close the keyboard. And by the way, triggering this is just pressing Command K on your keyboard. Additionally, we probably also want to have a bit better styling. So these are exactly the props you should keep in mind. Keyboard dismiss mode on drag. I can now drag this and it would close my keyboard. That is exactly what we need. Give the input a bit better styling, because right now it's actually hard to see. So this is just minor fixes here. But then we should also do initially improve probably our keyboard. Okay. Yeah, that actually looks nicer. So now it displays this button while typing in it. And I don't know if there's like does the API have a search endpoint? I really don't know, honestly. I don't think so. So I would have to look into the documentation. No, I don't think there's any kind of search here available. So we're gonna just stick with this. Okay, so now we have the search, but what I probably also want is on a text input, and especially if your text input is making a search request to a real API, you probably want to have debouncing. I will just tell Claude this to add debounce to the input. And we're going to see what it makes out of this. And if you have never heard about this, you will see in code as well as in our application what debounce means. Because essentially debounce means let's wait for this amount of time, could be a couple of milliseconds, until you do something. So let's now take a closer look at the code. The actual text input is pretty easy. It is a styled text input, which is a React Native component. You can specify a lot of properties like placeholders, colors. You can set the keyboard mode. Actually, for this one, I would probably say, yeah, this keyboard mode is actually fine. We don't have to change this. If you have a number input, you could change the number, this like to a number input, but we don't really need this. We also don't really want to have autocorrect or auto capitalize. Most importantly, this is connected to a state, our search query, as well as an onChange text function that is always triggered when our query changes. With React, we can now have a use effect. This one will call, this one will run whenever our search query changes. So basically, whenever the text changes, this use effect hook is triggered again. And normally it would just filter our list, but now we have this set debounced query as well, which will then filter our list. So with this debounce timeout of 300 milliseconds, I could now do something like type quickly, and you see nothing changes while I keep typing. So only if I now stop typing, it will actually perform our debounce query. Most likely we have another function here, which now filters the Pokemon. It's actually using memos, so it's a bit optimized. Don't really need this anymore with React 19 and the automatic improvement that's going on under the hood, but it's okay. We can still keep this. So do we actually have manual keyboard interaction? No, we could do this, but we don't really need this. So I think this is a pretty nice text input with debouncing. You can play around with the debounce time if you want to, but overall this should work still is advertised. Okay, great. This is one functionality I would like to add. In fact, let's do a quick commit for this. So this simply adds a search input to our branch here. We don't have a PR yet, so we're fine. On top of that, I would now also like to introduce favorites into my application. And if we talk about favorites, you might already think, oh, this means we need to store some data. And I agree, yes, we probably need to store data. Let's just see what Claude comes up with if we type this. Please add the function to add favorites to our app now. I want to mark a Pokemon as favorite on the ID page, and then see a list of my favorites on the favorites page, of course. The name here is still index, so we just gotta find the right path. Is there anything else? I also make sure to persist the list locally. So now we have a couple of options if we're thinking about persisting data in our React Native application. One thing is there is something called an async storage. This is like a very easy key value storage in every React Native application that you can use with an appropriate package. Yes, you can see AI is always going for that first. Here it is using this one. Yeah, let's just allow it. React Native async storage. This is a plugin which you can add to access that key value storage. There are different other ways to also do this. I think for the most easiest way, we can stick to this for the moment because it's okay, but it's definitely not the fastest way to implement storage in your application. Beyond the key value storage, there's also a SQLite database available. For this case of storing favorites, I think the SQLite database is probably a bit overkill, but I have some other videos in which I use the SQLite database, so check them out if you're interested in that. For example, also the game Tiny Harvest I have built is using a SQLite database heavily. But beyond that, there are even more ways to store data. You can also use from SQLite a key value storage. There's MMKV, which is personally my favorite way. And maybe if we do a little quality check at the end of the application, I will show you how to transform your application from using async storage to better use MMKV. This is now not really important, but only C. So most of the twos are already done. We have the package. We have the persistent, we have favorite button to Pokemon details, and let's see. So on this page, I now have a heart up there. And if we go into our details page, we should see the change somewhere. So somewhere on this page is a use favorite. That's pretty nice. So we have a new file, favorites, in our lib. It has a favorites key. It uses the async storage. And there are very easy ways to interact with it. Pretty much what you can do at that point is you can call getItem or setItem. SetItem simply writes a string to the async storage, getItem gets it back. Where it gets challenging is usually a bit in how you store it because you can't really store objects in there. You can only stringify your code. In this case, it will stringify my favorite Pokemon array. And back here, it will JSON parse the data. A bit ugly, but that's usually how it works. Also interesting that the use favorites here is now loading the favorites right in the beginning. So we have them locally available. That's actually pretty smart because if we then get the favorites from this hook, they're already initialized. And once we add something, it will be stored, but it will also just update the local state. That is a good way of handling this, and I think we can live with that. So let's mark this one as favorite. And if I now go back to my favorites, I see no favorites yet. Let's see, maybe this is not yet correctly. Okay, yep. If I now go here and go back, okay, that's interesting. The list is not updating. Let's check if the state is correctly. Yeah, the details page is actually getting the state correct. But here the favorites page is not updating the favorites after I favorite one. Please fix. I'm always very gentle. I use please. I think I shouldn't do this. I think this adds more overload to AI if I add please to all these commands. But the problem here is that how the favorites is or was implemented is that it only loads the favorites initially, but let's see what this one tinkers. So the issue is that the favorite list only loads once on mount. I'll add use focus effect to the list when a screen comes into focus. This is a great point to talk about use focus effect as well. So before we had the use effect hook, which runs once or depending on the dependency array, when something changes in your component. Now we also have the use focus effect, which always runs when you enter that view. The syntax is a bit weird as you also need this use callback block inside, but then it simply calls the refresh from use favorites, and then we essentially most likely get here a fresh set. Let's see what refresh actually does. It calls get favorites from storage and just sets them. So now I should be able to go into something else here, mark this as favorite, and then it shows up here as well. This also, clicking on it here, takes me to the exact details page. That's pretty cool. We could also push this. That would be a fun way of doing this without jumping to a new tab. Actually, we're gonna take a mental note, and I'm gonna write this down for refactoring, to show favorite in overlay page later. All right, for the moment and for this part, we have now done this. We have our local storage using the async storage package. You can find many more plugins. You just have to search correctly. So if you go to Expo plugins, you're gonna find a long list of, or let's actually call Expo modules, not plugins. There's something else. If we go to the Expo modules, this is why I kind of like AI. I think under reference, under reference, we're gonna see the Expo SDK. So here you would find all these different packages. In here, you would also see the one we just added probably. Where is async storage? Async storage, right here. Okay, it is under third-party libraries because this is actually not one of the Expo modules and instead one of the community. We haven't talked much about external packages because there are just too many. I just want to mention at this point that they're both third-party libraries like this one that you can install, as well as all these Expo SDK packages. Say you have something with audio handling, you would install the Expo audio package, NXPX Expo install the package and use it in your app. And same for camera, clipboard, or anything of the SDK. And all of that would work here in our Expo Go application. Where it gets challenging is if you find any sort of third-party library, potentially, let's say MMKV, I don't know, MMKV, if this is already now a part. Nope, I don't think so. So this key value storage would require a different kind of build. We can talk about that in the end, but for the moment, while you're getting into React Native and getting used to these concepts, I want you to stay focused with the Expo Go application, as this makes your life a whole lot easier. Okay, I want to do one final thing. So maybe mark favorites in the Pokemon list with a star or some golden shine, glow, whatever. Just figure something out to make it cool. What I want to show you is that with libraries like this, with creating your own hook, and this is essentially the use favorites is our own hook, you can import them in any place. We see it here. We just destructure it to get the functionality out of it, or at least AI did that for us. And we can do this on any other page. So that's why we not implemented this favorite logic like in just one of our pages, but instead in here. Same reason as the API calls, how we set up initially, and also the types in different folders. Okay, cool. Now with that in place, I can mark this. The list also reloads, it fetches the latest data, and here the favorites also nicely present our favorites. This is a good place to make a quick commit of these changes. We added the new package, we got everything in place, so let's do commit and push, and let's quickly refactor this. So going back here, let's zoom in a bit, create our PR. Okay, this is search and favorites actually. And we create the PR. And I'm pretty sure there's something we can improve about both our keyboard handling as well as state management. Okay, so let's check out what my colleague told us. Summary by CodeRabbit. And what are the issues? Async storage is compatible with Expo. Yeah, there can be problems with different versions of packages in the Expo Go and the Expo SDK version, but this is something we can ignore for now. I don't think this is an issue. The minor one, the nested pressable can bubble and also fire the parent on press. That is a decent fix, I guess. So we just need to call in the right place event stop propagation. I think this is a reasonable change, and we should apply this to our favorites index file. So let's just quickly go there and find the on press somewhere. I think this is the pressable mentioned, right? Which does the navigation, no, which does remove favorite, this one. Actually, yeah, this is remove, and here we got the pressable. Yeah, this child pressable could trigger the parent. That is true. So let's add this and change it correctly. That is a good catch. These things really up your React. Well, this is applying the React best practices essentially. And this is stuff sometimes the AI agents miss. Yeah, this is another fix. So also this is a prompt. I'm now lazy. So I'll just give this here that in my favorites, the parsing of the data can go wrong. And therefore we should wrap this with a try catch. Better safe than sorry. That is always a decent idea. So now let's do the quick update, amend this to our push once we got a nice message here. And then we can merge this. So here we go. Merge the pull request into your main branch. And then as always, do the sync. So check out to main back again. And I hope you're getting into the flow of how this should work correctly. So we're now back to main. Git, can we just pull? Yes, git pull. And then our application should be just fine as it was before. But now our code quality is definitely safe and improved. So far, we've built a reasonable Pokédex application together. We have learned, on the one hand, how to use AI, how to use prompts to achieve what we want in the application. But on the other hand, we also looked into a couple of files in the structures, in the architecture to understand the mental model behind building React Native application. And this combination is really what you need if you want to get into React Native in 2026. You don't need to memorize all the specific syntax for something. AI is pretty good and will give you the results you need, but you need to understand how the files work together, what mental picture you need of the app, of the routing, of buttons, of functionalities, of styles, so you can then also prompt AI in a better way. And now, in the end, I want to give you something more as we look a bit closer at a couple of places in our applications and tell AI to improve them as well as then review them. Essentially, we're doing a little refactoring together, and then we're going to do another round of refactoring with the CodeRabbit AI review of this PR. So let's get started by creating a branch. Let's call this refactoring, and then we can probably start. So if you see something like this, a row that has the same UI all the time, that is always a good idea to have it in its own component. Also probably here the flat list of favorites. So let's say refactor both favorite list items as well as Pokemon list items into their own components. This is the first point. This takes place and we can actually kick off another AI agent if we wanted to as well. What I want is, so let's say I don't have any. Can I unbookmark them? Okay, we actually do have a no favorites yet. That is a pretty cool one. But what I would also like to see is when this page loads, there's something better we can do instead of that snap here. We want implement skeleton loading views on the ID details page. You will see what this is in a second. Essentially, this is what you see if you open YouTube, Instagram, and the app loads. These gray areas that indicate that there is some sort of UI, but it's also not yet there. And skeleton views simply improve the perceived performance of your application. So that's why I wanted to fire off this prompt. Additionally, what we could also do is what I took note of, that from the favorites page, if we navigate to a Pokemon, it actually currently changes back to our, let's say, main tab. If you check this out and look closely at the code, you're gonna see that right here we have the pressable, which calls route or push to Pokédex and the item. Nothing wrong with that, but essentially I would like to be able to just like push this over. That could be a full screen modal, it could be a push. I actually don't care too much. So what I want to say is add another page that displays the Pokemon details like ID. Probably refactor it into a component and then display this above the app in the top layout stack as a transparent modal with padding, so we can open this page from favorites, from my favorites page, instead of the current push behavior of the default details page. All right, that's quite a big prompt, honestly, but I think AI will be able to help us figure that out. In the meantime, I like to review the other things that have changed. So now we do have in the ID page a skeleton loader. Defined after skeleton loader, use it, skeleton box. So skeleton styles are implemented. We have this skeleton component. Now this already looks pretty good, but I can't really test this. So what I want to do is I probably can I do like, I want to do this like with a little delay. I think we can just go into our function. So let's go in here and add a delay here. So then it becomes a bit more apparent. Okay, so let's actually do like a, I don't know, a 3-second delay here. So now when I go here, we see this little UI and then our UI finally pops in. So having a skeleton view simply helps to tell the user, hey, something is going on, it's almost there, don't leave, and then it's there. That is the whole point of using skeleton views. So we're already good with the skeleton view, and it looks like I have to, oh yeah. Okay, this is our refactoring happened. It took out the elements and we now have a Pokemon list item simply extracted to the right place. We have the Pokemon favorite list item extracted here, and we do also have the Pokemon details page in the components folder. That is a very great restructuring because now we can see the favorites. It's actually pretty short. If you go to the Pokédex and check it out here, we just have the essential functionality and a bit of surrounding view. But then in the list, the render item actually just uses the new component that we created. So for these things, it is absolutely great to just employ and just tell AI exactly what should happen. Is there any other prompt I need to? Okay, so the refactoring was fine. The skeleton loading is fine. And this one was about the additional view. Let's check that out. Let's try it out first. So I will bookmark this one. Okay, I do have this little delay now. And if I go back to my favorites, oh yeah, here we go. It looks cool. Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice one. Okay, so how does it work now? Let's quickly figure that out. We have this details modal, and as I said before, presentation here is everything. It changed it to transparent modal, not showing the header, and we have a fade animation which brings it in. That's actually pretty cool. I should also maybe go to my API here now and change this to like just 500. That is more reasonable. Okay. Now, the only thing I see is this is kind of popping in. So what I would tell AI now is I would say the UI of the Pokemon, and I think we have like the details, right, is now popping in when ready. Use enter animations from reanimated to make it more smooth and build up the page. Reanimated is a package that is installed in pretty much every React Native app that I know. React Native Reanimated, here it is, as well as a gesture handler for the app. These are two essential packages that you definitely need to know about, because with Reanimated, you can get powerful animations that run on the UI thread of your application. That is essentially the one that's basically better than the JavaScript thread, because it is more performant, it is more native, so to say. And with Reanimated, you can do any kind of animations, and they also have built-in enter or exiting animations. And you can just tell AI to apply this. Usually that works out pretty well, and we should be hopefully able to see this soon in our application as well. Let's see, what else could we do? We did a nice refactoring as well already. I don't know if I would like to have the favorites here. So having this as a hook in here, it works, yeah, but I feel like this should be a context around my application, because there's a React context available that we could use. But let's do one thing after the other. Yeah, that's better, huh? That's so much better. Okay, we're going there, and wow, you're coming in nicely, Ivysaur and Charizard. You're popping in as well. Nailed it once again. That loading isn't too great, but I think we can probably live with that. One more thing is that there's actually something called a parallax scroll, and I think we want that as well. Implement parallax scroll for the details page using Reanimated. So parallax scroll is something you probably have seen already. It basically means this part here, or some part, scrolls out slower than the rest. So essentially it feels like the page is moving on top of something. It's hard to explain. It actually works better when it's finally done. And implementing it is honestly not a trivial thing usually. We could have like a probably 20 to 30 minute long video on how you implement parallax scroll. So I'm now curious if AI can nail this with one shot, but I'm pretty sure Opus is able to figure this out. And we should then also see that if we scroll this down, that some elements expand further. Again, I don't know if this will work out. Yeah, this is already a good start. You see Charizard, when I scroll it down here, getting bigger. Now I just, at the top, need to have a bit more orange. So I'm not sure. We're just a component on this page. It is not an easy thing to implement. It is absolutely not an easy thing to implement, and doing this by hand is really hard. So is now implemented. Here's, yeah, I think it's not entirely implemented. I will do a little reload, but if I go here, it kind of works, but it works in the wrong direction. It looks like it works in the wrong direction when scrolling the view. The Pokemon view leaves faster than it should. Also, on overscroll, I still see white BG, but there should be the color background of the Pokemon. Again, it is not like a perfect explanation of what's wrong, but AI does not need perfect prompts anymore. You just really need to describe the problem you're experiencing. And the important part here is that if you're not a developer, if you're not a mobile developer, if you're not into React Native, it can be really hard to find the right words of the problems and what you're experiencing. So learning React Native, learning the foundations, learning the mental models behind this, and like what is an overscroll, what is a tab bar, what is a native tab bar, This is the important part in 2026 and the era of AI to learn. It is not how you write every single style sheet line in your application. Really, that is not the point anymore. And I hope this became clear along this video now that you don't need that. See what we've done. This is an incredible application. If you have this on your device, you can tinker around with it and it should just work. Okay, it kind of works. Okay, on over scroll, the BG colored view now extends bottom, but should extend more at the top. I don't know why I use an exclamation mark, honestly. I just wanted to make my point here with AI. I think actually since using AI and agents, my coffee consumption also has increased. Although it is a decaf, but yeah, now we're talking. This is what I wanted to see. Now the last missing thing is actually that starting from base stats, the view should have a background color like white to improve the parallax scroll impression, because right now it looks okay-ish, but I think there's still room for improvement. Also, my favorites, this should be improved also. Let's just say make the list of favorites more exciting, maybe add a title to the view, and I don't know. I was just thinking about like having a button and then we can toggle these, but I don't want to go too crazy here. We just wanted to do a little round of refactoring that makes our application better. Now, I think at this point, yes, I will allow this. No, what did just happen? Okay, yeah, it's probably about the favorites. Can read property fire of undefined. That comes probably from the editor. So this page should be still fine. Yeah, the parallax works in that direction. This is better than any kind of parallax I could have shown you in an implementation, honestly. It just works exactly as I wanted. It even fades out the title if you notice that. Yeah, this feels so right and so good at the same time. This is really good. We can keep the rest. And we also have my favorites here. Yeah, well, that's probably not the best one, but could we use iOS big titles on both favorites and Pokemon list? So this is another thing that if you don't know about it, you probably don't even know that it exists. And there are probably like 100 or 500 more of these small things. And I wish I could do a video with just like all these small little nuggets and like keywords you should probably know about React Native and building your app. But until you know them, just try your best in looking at native applications and maybe just telling AI, hey, in my iOS native app something, I saw that they have this XYZ pattern. Can we also have that in our React Native app? And that is, for example, on iOS, there's this concept of having like a big title. And you see here a bit going on. I already see content, inset, adjustment behavior. Yeah, that is exactly the way it goes. It kind of destroyed a bit about the search bar. Yeah, now it brought it back. Yep, here we go. This is what I meant. We just don't see the title right now. Okay. And for favorites, we can't really scroll that view very far, but yeah, that looks correct. Now there is no title in the default state yet. We should show a big header title as well, even before scrolling. We really want to nail down this native behavior. And we could now also do a refactoring of our favorites, but I think at this point it is enough. So I just want to wait until this last little piece is finished. And looking at the code changes, we're gonna see that we actually touched a lot of files once again. So let's just see. Now let me add a header to the Pokédex list as well. Maybe this is using the wrong background color. That's hard to say. Maybe we should look this up in the options. So this means we need to find the right file, for example, the Pokédex. And in here we have, the header large title style and the header large title color. So this is what you see up there. Now you see Pokédex here and then it moves into the title. Is that better than before? You can decide. Honestly, I think, it looks kinda cool, but at the same time, it's also probably a bit too much. So if you don't like something, the good thing is that you can just go and check out the changes. For example, in this case, where did we change? We changed here in the file, and this is only because we're using Git. We changed here this one, and I honestly don't like this, so I'll just reset it. And then we should be able, when we reload that view, to see this. I probably want to get rid of the Pokédex again. So I could go to my details page or the Pokédex page here. I can see all the changes and I will be able to pretty quickly figure out what I want to remove. This is my Pokemon list. Oops. This is actually the details page. So I would go here and there most likely is this one here, 2 header fields. So I'll remove them and then we're back to default. For the favorites, I could do this as well, but as a little help, I will leave it in case you check out the repository, because that page should be fine. We also have parallax on the details. I'm still fascinated by that. All right, let's do the commit message here. That should be a long one. I will just let AI generate that for us again and commit and push our code. I will also publish the branch at this point. Then we see our final refactoring PR come up and I will create a PR. And although we used AI, we probably applied best practices through skills that you might have installed or not. There's always something we or the I or anyone might have missed. And that is why I'm really happy that now CodeRabbit takes a final look. It takes also some pressure off my shoulders to writing the perfect code in the first place, because I'm pretty sure that after this round of reviewing the code, I can be sure that everything that I did in the PR is top-notch quality. All right, so we have new features, details now display animated modal, skeleton loaders, favorite list, a bit of styling. We do have 5 nitpick comments, so this is going to be interesting. On the Pokédex details ID page, why is this expanded? Minor issue, minor is not too critical, I guess. Handle potential array ID to avoid blank screen. Yeah, we don't really need that, no. This one's also minor. Reset loading state and guard against stale async updates on the details page. Loading is never reset. Yeah, well, that is a good one actually, I think. So I will get that prompt right into the app. I will just do a new Claude and tell it exactly what to do based on this. Then we have another one, minor guard image against missing artwork URLs. Yeah, we've kind of done this. So we actually did pretty well with that refactoring. If CodeRabbit isn't finding more potential issues, that is really good. So yeah, these are really the small nitpicks. A couple of simplifications here, favorite links, avoid double parsing, prefer safe area insets over fixed padding top. That's actually a really good one. I like that. Prefer safe area, suggested fix. Yeah, use the safe area view with top insets. This is actually an interesting concept and important one as well. So I would like to really just apply this to my details modal. Can I do that somehow? Let's see. If I go to the Pokemon details modal page and I just replace this. I I wish I could do it like that. I wonder why it's not working. So this is like the git change div. Can I somehow apply this? Actually, let's ask AI. Please apply this git div to the details modal. Okay, because if I'm not able to do it, I'm sure AI can easily do this. Actually, I think this is like a defined syntax with a plus and minus. So I think there is an easier command to apply this. But now it's editing the page. Yes, allow this. And the interesting thing here is that now, instead of using a fixed value, we're getting the safe area insets. This is a super important construct that everyone using React Native and building native apps should be aware of, because up here, there can be a different height. Some have like a dynamic island, a notch, or whatever. And this distance here is usually measured and available within the use safe area insets hook from React Native safe area context. And we bring it in and we use it then here to, for example, apply it as a top inset. In the same way in the insets, we could, by the way, also, can I dive into the type? Edge insets also get right, bottom, or left values. So if I had something that would show up down here, I would make sure to also use the safe area insets and apply padding bottom using the insets here. So for iOS, it's like this area here. So potentially, I don't know, about like 30-ish pixel or so. In insets that you want to apply. And you don't want to have that as a fixed value in your app usually, but instead more like this. So this is, although it is listed as a nitpick here, I found this to be actually a pretty like good and important one. And this one is also good. Too many good notes here. Let's go to our lib file again, where we have this one. This is just for testing. And if you have anything that is just for testing, it is probably a lot safer if you guard it with an if-def. If-def strikes if you run your application like we do right now here in development mode. And you want to make sure that this is not happening in production. So with this check, we can make sure that nothing goes wrong. Now, let's finally push these changes. They were really good, and we're gonna commit them directly and push them to our PR. And I remember that I wanted to show you a bit more about the debugging tools. So before we leave this one, let's bring up the debugging tools one more time, pressing J in here to get us to the page. Actually, the PR can be closed now, so you're gonna merge that. Don't close it. Closing the PR will not merge it. You're gonna actually have to merge it. And then let's check out the dev tools. So potentially there will be problems in your application and you now need to debug them. What are you going to do? Well, I hope that very soon we'll be able to plug in both the dev tools into AI, and I think it's already possible. If I tell Claude to run my app, it sees the logs, and I do this all the time when there's an error in the logs of my application somewhere here. As an example, did we break anything? No, we haven't recently broken anything. I just copy it, place it into Claude, and it fixes it right in the place. But otherwise, again, you can use this here to get the console logs. Under components, I always enable highlight updates when component re-render, especially when I'm trying to debug performance in my application. By default, you don't need this all the time, but it is a helpful thing all the time. Then, if you're unsure about what's going on here in your view, check out the components. You can dive exactly into the tree, and that tree is actually quite big here. But I think I can just click in there and it will take me to the right child. So this takes me right here to the text. I can also like look at the favorite list item. I see it is memoized. It has this data. I can give this a bit more space. Then I see what's going on here, who's rendering it. I can even probably, can I change actually the font size in there? I think I never tried that before. I don't know why this is flipping around so much right now. It's definitely not what I want. So let's do another one. I will try to get this one here. Is the list like constantly re-rendering or updating or something? I wonder. Okay. Could you please just stop this? Okay. Suspended. Oh my. I'm getting deep into debugging territory here. I didn't really want this. But this is a bit more advanced. As I said before, you can do profiling. So you record essentially something, you move around in the app, you pause it, and then you're going to see what is happening, which page is loading, which components are re-rendering for which reason. Check out the other videos I did on improving performance. But the most essential pieces are really, if I refresh this, seeing your console logs in here in a bit easier way, using the sources to set a breakpoint here and there. And actually, this would be cool to show my requests. I think we initially saw the requests in here. I don't know why we're not seeing them anymore, but the React Native team is working on improving this part as well, because right now it is coming from Expo and there are other ways to do this. So I expect that this part about the network request will change in upcoming versions anyway, as well as there will be native Mac client, maybe even native Windows client at some point for these debugging tools. But essentially, they are pretty much the same as your browser debugging tools. And with that, you have your own application. It is only running in Expo Go. If you want more information about how to take this to the actual iOS and App Store, check out the video I have on this channel about building this application. But so far, in terms of getting started, I think you have probably built an even better application than I did with your prompts, no matter which AI agent you choose. And you hopefully also understand the mental concepts and the general concepts of React Native and our Expo application. All right, that's how I would approach and learn React Native in 2026. I don't really see how we go back to the traditional way of just picking up and memorizing all the different lines and the syntax. AI is just great at that. But if you take one thing away from this video, it's hopefully how you architecture a React Native application, how you think about the application, how you review the changes that AI is making to your code, and in general, just understand what's going on, how to prompt, and how to move the React Native application in the right way. You don't need to understand every single line of code anymore in 2026 and beyond. If you want to take things a step further, check out the Zero to Hero mission on galaxies.dev. In there, you will learn absolutely everything you need to know about Expo and React Native, building different applications, authentication, EAS, push, MMKV, everything that is out there to make your apps even better. The whole code to this video is linked below in the description, as well as our sponsor of today, CodeRabbit. If you haven't checked them out, do it right now. Link right below this video, and you're gonna get amazing code reviews basically for free with CodeRabbit. I absolutely love it. It is like a good friend sitting next to me and telling me what I could improve in my code without feeling like ashamed that I've wrote bad code, because it's just AI and it just makes my code so much better. So go check it out. Link to the code as well down there. Hit the like and subscribe button if you want to stay up to date about React Native in 2026 and beyond, and I will hopefully catch you in the next video where you try to learn even more about React Native. Let me know what that is and how you want to see it in a video, and I will absolutely create it, or at least consider it. So until then, happy coding, Simon.